Thank you for tuning into the My Positive Perspective Internet Show today, where we feature individuals and groups who share the common goal of improving the local Charleston community. Today's episode is brought to you by Gatorade, a great way to quench your thirst. Joining me on today's episode is Butch Kennedy. So how you doing, Butch?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing real good. And October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So what we wanted to do was discuss, this topic with Butch, and Butch, maybe you could start off by telling people what you do and what gives you the expertise to talk about the subject.
Well, about 7 years ago, when we came to the Charleston area, we started off as Project Unity USA, and when I came to Charleston to start working on crime in the community, we had to focus our efforts towards domestic violence because it was the #1 crime in our community. I had a young lady tell me that. She said, Mr. Kennedy, you cannot deal with violence in our community without dealing with domestic violence. So for the past 7 years, I've been working in the domestic violence related field. I started an organization called Real MAD, which is Real Men Against Domestic Violence and Abuse, and our motto is Real Men Don't Hit Women. Like I said, I've been doing this for over 7 years. I also do the training for men in domestic violence throughout the state. So I go all over the state training men in domestic violence. I also do the same thing for the clergy. We have a training program for the clergy as well for domestic violence. So I've been doing this for 7 years, and the statistics are just overwhelming.
Yeah, and you mentioned it being the #1 problem in our community. Can you maybe elaborate on that?
Well, domestic violence is the #1 crime in the state of South Carolina today. The sad part about it is nobody ever wants to talk about it. Nobody ever says anything about domestic violence, and nobody wants to talk about it until it affects you directly. The domestic violence is the #1 cause of death or injury to women under the age of 46 years old. The #1 cause. One in three women will be victims of domestic violence in their lifetime. 1 in 7 men will be victims of domestic violence in their lifetime. The statistics, like I said, they're outrageous.
Yeah, certainly. Maybe to one of our viewers who may be tuning in, what would be like one of the very first steps of domestic violence and I'm assuming it gets worse and worse and worse. What would be one of the first steps that may be hard to identify?
It's usually, domestic violence usually starts off in little steps. It starts off by demeaning someone, putting someone down. It's usually a verbal thing, and then as the verbal confrontations get to be a little more they escalate a little bit more. It turns into a physical type of incident. And of course, we know that South Carolina ranks #2 in the nation now for men that kill women, but on the average of 38 women have been killed every year in South Carolina for the past 9 years.
And of course, this subject is germane to what's going on nowadays, because we see a lot of the NFL football players having this problem or being accused of this problem, and it really awakens people and helps them identify just how common this is. What's your kind of take on the NFL players?
My thing with the NFL is they just did not get it. They just did not get it. This message has been out for quite some time, and the NFL has been in this situation for quite some time. Ray Rice wasn't the first NFL athlete to commit domestic violence. It's just that the commissioner, the way he decided to punish Ray Rice, it just infuriated the community, and the community began to galvanize and rally around domestic violence. I mean, it's more aware. People are more aware of domestic violence now. The NFL had that power, and if you look at the NFL during October, how they do breast cancer during October, just imagine, just because of that one video with Ray Rice, just imagine how much good has come out of that one video. Just imagine if they did that all month long.
Well, the previous NFL year we had the tight end for the New England Patriots, kid out of Florida, Hernandez, murder his girlfriend. I mean, I guess they treated that like an isolated incident and kind of swept it under the rug.
Well, he actually murdered his girlfriend's cousin's boyfriend or something.
Oh, okay.
It was actually a guy. It was Odin Lloyd. But there's a lot of domestic violence going on in the NFL. We had a young gentleman, that killed himself after a domestic violence incident as well. So I mean, it's prevalent. It's just not in the NFL, and that's what I want everybody to understand.
Yeah, it isn't.
Yeah, in 2010, the CDC declared that domestic violence is a national epidemic, and that's huge. It affects over 12 million people a year.
Wow.
12 million victims every year are victims of domestic violence. And that's a lot of people.
That is a lot. And I'm sure there's more than one answer for this. What would you say is the number one reason or motivator for someone to commit these acts against others?
It's hard to tell. A lot of these problems with domestic violence comes from, because domestic violence is not about a physical issue, it's about power and control. Everybody who has to understand domestic violence has to understand that the person that's fighting you is not, it's not about you, it's just about power and control. He wants to have that power and control over you. Once he loses that power and control over you, that's when it becomes physical.
Yeah, okay. So for victims out there, understand it's not about you. It's just really the fact that you were in an adverse situation, and the only and getting yourself out of that adverse situation would be the correct way to handle it. What would a woman do who's in this situation and wants to get out but doesn't really know how?
It's really difficult. I mean, because it's kind of hard to say to a woman that you need to leave the person that you love because the person is abusing you. It's really hard for women to see that. So a woman will leave on the average, will think about leaving, or will be abused on the average 36 times before she does it.
Wow.
So she gets beaten 36 times before she actually does leave that environment. So it's a difficult situation for women, and to say that it's not really about them, it's not. As far as the mentality of the abuser goes, I mean, he just wants to control that woman. So in some instances, it is about him controlling that person, and some men, believe that they have the right to control people, control women, and that's basically part of the problem. Is that when some people get in these relationships, it's kind of hard to tell who that person is that you're in that relationship with at first, and over time you realize that you're in a relationship with somebody who's going to be violent towards you or has a propensity towards violence. And then once you get to that person, once you get to that point, you've already introduced them to your family. You've already, hung out and saw your family. So now you're vested in this person.
You may have a child with that person.
You may have a child with this person. So now you're vested with that person. And when that person attacks you, you're too embarrassed. I always say that, everybody says, why didn't a woman speak up? Why didn't a woman talk about it? I always equate this to the fact that being a man. Being a man, I've been in a lot of fights in my life. And I never talk about any of the fights that I lost. Never do. I always talk about the fights that I win. But when we're asking women all the time, when they get in an abusive situation, can you just talk about the fight that you just lost?
Right.
And nobody really wants to do that. We're all embarrassed. When I get in a fight and I lose, I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. I'm embarrassed.
And that's the human.
That's just human. I mean, we have to learn how to empathize with victims more. And if you're a victim of domestic violence, like you asked, how do we get out? I mean, we have shelters available for women. We have Lives Lifeline that can get you out of a situation. We have My Sister's House that you can contact them. You can even contact Project Unity. We have an outreach coordinator that will help you as well. Our main focus, our main goal is to get South Carolina out of the top 10 as far as domestic violence is concerned, as far as men murdering women. Our goal is to get us back out in the 40s.
Yeah, and it's so ridiculous that we're that high in domestic violence. We're not even near that high in terms of the overall population.
Well, you got to look at it. I look at it this way: we're on the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to education.
Yeah, that's
we're
true.
on the top of the totem pole when it comes to murdering women. So, I mean, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in our community, and we as men, I think, until we as men stand up and speak out about domestic violence and hold other men accountable for domestic violence, it will never end. We always look at it as a woman's problem, but I believe that men need to stand up and take a stand and check other men about their attitudes and the way that we treat women.
Well said. Well said. And thanks for being a guest, and I'm sure we're going to have you back on, talk about some more specific groups for domestic violence victims and things like that. Thank y'all for tuning into the My Positive Perspective. Have a great week.
On a sunny day, I feel my within, you'll never be without. So I roll, feeling strong and so invincible.